Hi guys, I'm just another guy named James, and today I'm going to be talking about The Power of Shazam, which was a graphic novel released by DC Comics in 1994. This graphic novel is interesting. It's kind of the second attempt to reboot Shazam or Captain Marvel into the post-crisis DC continuity. The first attempt being a limited series written by Roy and Dan Thomas, just Roy Thomas, I think. But that's not what we're talking about today. Today we're talking about The Power of Shazam, which is written and drawn by Jerry Ordway, and I think fully illustrated by Jerry Ordway. It's a pretty good little story. Like I said, it's the second attempt to bring Shazam into the post-crisis DC continuity. The first attempt had limited success, but never enough to spin off into a series. So it is actually largely considered to just be this weird anachronistic part of the DC canon. But this graphic novel, The Power of Shazam, is what is considered the start of post-crisis Captain Marvel. It's a really good one. The name Jerry Ordway is probably familiar to you because of his run on Superman, which is pretty good. His artwork in that is not, in his run on Superman, is a bit stiff, especially compared to what we get in this graphic novel, where the artwork in this graphic novel is just absolutely gorgeous. But yeah, overall, I think it's just a really interesting story. It's a Captain Marvel Shazam origin, but I think it's honestly a lot better than the one in the limited series, and it's also a lot better than the one in the movie from 2017 or 18 or whenever that movie came out. So yeah, honestly, I think with all that being said, I'm kind of ready to just hop straight into our story, which opens in Egypt, where we see a group of archaeologists is exploring an ancient tomb. And as they explore, we learn that their expedition has been funded by a mysterious man named Savannah. We then see Adam, and Cece and Marilyn Batson, who are the archaeologists, have found a secret passageway hidden away within the larger tomb. But we also see that Adam is more aggressive than the Batsons, much more aggressive, even pushing over Marilyn, eliciting a punch to the jaw from Cece. But they all three get distracted by the sight at the bottom of the stairs of hieroglyphics seemingly instructing them on how to enter the subchamber. But when Adam tries merely touching the hieroglyphics, he is zapped by lightning, leading Clarence to try his own way, touching the same place but also reading the glyphs which phonetically say Shazam, which opens the passageway. Inside the final tomb, the trio finds an ornate necklace with a scarab design on it, laying on a mummy, and Adam decides he wants to keep it. But Marilyn objects and calls on her husband Cece, but he is lost in a trance, viewing a mysterious specter which only he can see. Soon, Marilyn and Adam have a tug-of-war for the necklace, but when it breaks, Adam lashes out, punching Marilyn in the face, leading Cece to get involved in the ensuing brawl. As Cece and Adam fight, Cece tells Marilyn to run away out of the tomb and to get their Egyptian liaison, Saeed. Inside the tomb, the men keep fighting until Cece eventually gains the upper hand, and Adam plays possum, pretending that he wants to work together again, and Cece Batson, for whatever reason, trusts him, even letting him pick up his knife, which would prove to be the last mistake Cece Batson ever made. And as Adam takes the opportunity and stabs him in the back. And this also somehow causes a cave-in, but Adam is able to escape. And as he runs out of the tomb, he runs into Saeed. And instead of, exchanging any words, he just slashes Saeed's throat. And as Adam escapes, he steals Saeed's motorcycle so he can track down Marilyn Batson. Marilyn had made it back to her hotel room and she grabbed the last piece of the necklace before she left. And she's stashing it in the back of her daughter's teddy bear. But soon Adam appears on the scene, murdering Marilyn and kidnapping her daughter Mary, but leaving behind the bear as he doesn't know its importance. We then cut to Fawcett City, a thriving metropolis, but down on the streets we see a young boy trying to sell newspapers in the middle of traffic. But when he almost gets hit by a car and is run off the road, he is confronted by a mysterious man who somehow knows that his name is Billy. We then see a stranger lead Billy down to the subway, where they board a mystical train that leads into a cavern. But inside the cavern, Billy sees statues of the 7 deadly sins of man, before an old man appears before him, announcing himself to be the wizard, Shazam, a being who has used the wisdom of Solomon, the strength of Hercules, the stamina of Atlas, the power of Zeus, the courage of Achilles, and the speed of Mercury to combat the forces of evil for thousands of years, but he is now seeking a successor. The wizard then shows Billy some of Billy's own recent history. How Billy's uncle kicked him out of the house after the deaths of his parents in Egypt, leaving him to live on the streets. The wizard then tells Billy that the forces of evil are recollecting themselves. He tells Billy that all he needs to do is say his name, and upon calling out Shazam, Billy is transformed into Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel then kind of freaks out, honestly, throwing the wizard around, working out his rage at the death of his parents, feeling that they abandoned him and being overwhelmed by the weight of responsibility bearing down upon him. But eventually the stranger who led him into the subway is able to calm Captain Marvel down, before he once again becomes Billy and leaves the cavern. We then cut to Mr. Savannah, who is being questioned by the Egyptian government regarding the whereabouts of Adam, but Savannah basically gives them the cold shoulder, even blaming the Batsons for the destruction of the dig site. But one of the Egyptians, Said, was present at the attack, and Said survived, but he had his vocal cords cut out so he could no longer speak. And he knows that Adam is guilty. And since Savannah won't listen and help them, they decide to go public with the story. We then see Savannah go into a secret room in his penthouse where Adam is laying low. But Savannah sends him out to destroy the radio station that is going to spread the Egyptian story. The radio station just so happens to be in the alleyway where homeless Billy Batson sleeps. So when Adam and his crew go to demolish the building, Billy climbs up after them to see what's going on, but he's kicked off the rooftop and transforms into Captain Marvel. We then see Adam misrecognize Captain Marvel as CC Batson because the two look almost identical. But when Adam calls out Batson, Billy assumes that somehow Adam knows his secret identity. But Captain Marvel has bigger concerns right now, so he grabs the bomb that the demolition team had placed on the tower, and he throws it away straight into Savannah's exhibit for the World Fair, which is kind of why the whole Egyptian dig had been financed by Savannah. Captain Marvel then goes chasing through the building after the cronies, and he's able to take down 2 of them, but the 3rd and 4th both make it out of a car and try driving away. But Captain Marvel is able to chase them down and shrug off the crook's bullets before smashing the car into a wall, leaving the criminals but for the police. But we also see that Adam has gotten away, and he's figuring out that there is a connection between the tomb in Egypt and Captain Marvel. We then see Captain Marvel change back to Billy before he goes running into the subway to talk to the wizard, who lightly coerces Billy into staying the course as Captain Marvel, telling them that he met his parents' murderer that very day. We then cut back to Savannah's penthouse, where we see Adam grab the scarab necklace, and as he holds it, he feels the power coursing through his hands, and he remembered the word C.C. Batson said to open the tomb, and he calls out Shazam before he becomes Black Adam. And Black Adam goes out seeking after the missing piece of the scarab, and he just casually, for kicks and giggles, burns down Savannah's penthouse. Black Adam then tracks down the place on the street where Billy is sleeping, and he runs through Billy's stuff until he is able to find the missing piece of the scarab, which was sent back to Billy with all of his parents' final effects, as it was one of the only things, as the teddy bear that it was in was one of the only things left behind. And yeah, so Adam is then confronted by a cop, but the cop's no match for Black Adam, who moves on him, who after tossing the cop moves on to attacking the Egyptians from earlier. But before Black Adam can do any real damage to the Egyptians, Captain Marvel arrives on the scene and the two begin to fight. In the course of their fight, Black Adam confesses to the murders of the Batsons, and as they fight, Adam constantly taunts Captain Marvel, because Black Adam has also figured out that Captain Marvel is really Billy. But Captain Marvel is able, he's not only constantly taunting him about his age, but, about the deaths of his parents, which is just, it's kind of crazy work. But eventually the pair end up in a construction site, and Captain Marvel lands a solid kick to Black Adam's chest. And Adam once again tries to play possum and strike when convenient, but Captain Marvel doesn't fall for it like his dad did. And he folds Black Adam like an omelet before removing the scarab from him, stripping Adam of his powers. Captain Marvel then flies Adam out of the collapsing building before the Wizard strips Adam of his memories of having the Black Adam superpowers. We then see Billy have one final talk with the Wizard, where he agrees to keep being Captain Marvel, at least until he can rescue his sister. And we learn that the stranger from the beginning of the story, who led Billy to become Captain Marvel, was really Billy's father the whole time. And that is where the story ends. And honestly, it's, like I said, it's a good one. It's a really simple adventure. It's a very simple, tight, compact adventure. It is also the lead into a monthly Power of Shazam series. But this graphic novel really does just stand the test on its own. It has gorgeous artwork, as you saw throughout this video. I really like this is one of the true blends of the painted artwork and also comic book artwork. It still has all the line work of the comic book art. It still has all this great stuff going on. Because most of the time when you think painted comic book artwork, you think of like the Alex Rosses of the world, where it's just a straight up looks exactly like a painting. And this has some of that, but it still has the tight line work that really does make comic book art stand out. So I really like the artwork in that story. Completely done by Jerry Ordway, which I just think is very impressive. Overall, just good. The story's pretty compact. It has some interesting ideas in it. Black Adam being kind of, I didn't really go into much detail on Black Adam because neither does the graphic novel. But basically the only added detail that exists on him is that he was the first human that the Wizard gave the powers of Shazam to, but Black Adam misused them, so somehow Black Adam's powers were kept in the scarab. It's a bit confusing. They don't really explain it too much. But yeah, honestly, it doesn't really matter that much either. Yeah, I think that it's a really good story. I think having kind of a hesitant Captain Marvel is really interesting. Because most of the time you see it, and you see the Captain Marvel media, and what happens is you see Billy get the powers, and immediately he's like, yeah, this is great. I love this. So I think having seeing some of the hesitancy is really interesting. Seeing some of the fear of the responsibility that he's about to undertake. I think that's really cool, and I think it's cool seeing him get over it as the story goes on, because he agrees to give up his powers after the end of at the end of the story, but he really didn't want to, and the Wizard didn't want him to either. So they kind of So the wizard kind of is like, hey, what about your sister, though? That's a loose thread. Which it is, and that's something that I guess gets resolved in the monthly series that eventually spun off after this. Yeah, but it's kind of just an interesting. It's just to me, it's just a really interesting story. And Captain Marvel stories are almost always interesting, because Captain Marvel's had a really odd history with especially with DC Comics, being originally not a DC Comics property, in fact being made by one of their competition, until DC sued them for copyright infringement, citing that Captain Marvel was too similar to Superman, which I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but case in point, but regardless, Fawcett Comics, the creator of Captain Marvel, was sued for copyright infringement. The case actually went through. Fawcett lost, and DC was able to buy the rights to the character and I think they started producing Captain Marvel comics in the 70s. But during that time, DC lost the right to call Captain Marvel, call the comic Captain Marvel, because Marvel Comics had a comic called Captain Marvel. So I think that's a really interesting piece of history. And then after Crisis on Infinite Earths, there was the notable attempt to reboot Captain Marvel into post-crisis DC, spawning out of the Legends miniseries, which was Shazam: New Beginnings. And that was I read that graphic novel. I read that limited series. I have a video on it. It's remarkably okay. It's pretty good, but I can see why it never really spawned. Why it never really led to anything. And I can definitely see why this graphic novel by Jerry Ordway did lead to a fairly successful monthly series. Nothing crazy. I think it lasted maybe 50, 60 issues, maybe 40. I don't know. It was nothing crazy, but for what it is, very, very good. I'd certainly recommend giving this a read. This is a reproduction, or kind of a softcover reprint of this graphic novel. I'd highly recommend it. Just any way you can read it, I'd honestly highly recommend. But yeah, honestly, I don't have much to say on it because I kind of just liked it, you know? And there's not much going on that I liked about it. I liked Billy's dad a lot, but I also thought he was stupid. You know, I thought Mr. Batson turning his back on Black Adam right at the start, or on Adam right at the start, was incredibly stupid. You know, they just have this fight almost to the death. Adam's trying to stab Clarence Batson, and as soon as Batson beats Adam, he kind of just like Adam's like, oh, I'm sorry, some sort of Egyptian curse madness took over me, and Batson just believes him. Batson's like, sounds reasonable to me. Okay, here, you can have your knife. He doesn't give him the knife, but he lets him pick it back up, which he then literally uses within the next minute to stab him. It's just one of those things where it's like, yo, what is going on? And yeah, I think it was a really bold play also to have a 15. Oh, you have this long opening scene in Egypt. It's a solid like 15 pages, I think. 10 to 15 to 20 pages. And it's this long opening scene in Egypt with where they don't really tell you much. They just give you some character names, and even that they don't give you right away. And then yeah, we cut into Fawcett City, which is cool. You get some gorgeous artwork in and around Fawcett City, especially that opening scene at night. And yeah, it's just interesting. They don't spend a lot of time leading you in. They kind of just are like, okay, this is gonna be a Captain Marvel story. Eventually we're gonna get there, and I kind of like it. Like, I kind of like the slow build, and the action. The big fight at the end is even pretty short. It's not a very long, drawn out fight. Captain Marvel is kind of just able to beat Black Adam with a pretty good degree of speed. He uses the wisdom of Solomon to figure out that the Scarab gives Adam the powers, which, sure, and then he takes it off, and that's the fight over. And I liked getting to see a little bit of Captain Marvel action beforehand with the fight at the radio station. I thought that was a cool kind of like mid movie action scene. A good way to demonstrate some of his powers, but also his lack of like perfect understanding on how to use them. And yeah, I just really liked this graphic novel. I thought it was really good. Yeah, overall just pretty good story. But yeah, that's honestly all I got on this one. Would highly recommend. Like I said, find some way to read it. I don't know all the ways it's been reproduced, but I'd highly recommend reading it. That's really all I got on that one. So yeah, I'm just another guy named James. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.